This is DBR here with Afa Dworkin. Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, I wanted to ask you 10 questions, and I wanted to know what you thought about your work as an artist, as an arts administrator, as a social entrepreneur, as a cultural tastemaker. So here we go with our 10 questions. Are you ready?
Great. Absolutely.
Awesome. What is your name, and how do you define yourself?
I'm Afa Dworkin, and I define myself as an arts advocate, artist, and a catalyst.
Oh, what was that last part?
Catalyst.
Oh, a catalyst. What do you mean by that? I've never heard anyone define themselves as a catalyst. That's fascinating.
For me, I hope or aspire to be a catalyst in that an agent for change in direction, change in awareness, and action overall. That's what I hope to do, because my personal belief is such that we can do a lot on our own, but what we can achieve that's so much greater is the work that we can do through others, through and with others. And I think it falls upon many of us, and especially those who've been fortunate to be in leadership roles, to instigate that change and instigate that action and really serve as a catalyst. That's the manner in which I think of a catalyst.
I think that's brilliant. I love that. I am a catalyst, that we can all be a catalyst for and towards change. That's beautiful. Question number 2. What were your past dreams and aspirations as a child?
As a young person, I was absolutely convinced that I was going to be a solo violinist. It was probably both likely and unlikely in that I was very fortunate to grow up in a society where very high quality music education was entirely accessible, equitable, and quite excellent. So I had access to studies on the violin, the piano, theory, choir, etc. And I loved it, even though the unlikely piece of it comes from lack of arts background from my parents. My mom's a linguist. My dad was a chemical engineer. So the arts were not part of the mix, but they did allow me to pursue it not because they necessarily believed that the arts or music are great as a profession, but they thought that they're pretty integral to a young person's overall wholesome development. So I was fortunate to have most incredible teaching in the old Soviet regime. And these people were the ones who very much shaped my thinking about the world. And I loved that connection I had with music and the violin. And my dream was definitely to become a soloist. And I fancied myself as someone who'd travel the world and communicate through music and pass it on and collaborate with amazing artists, etc. The dream morphed eventually when I was a teenager and upward that I would be a violinist, but not necessarily limited to solo. I then loved chamber music, and I played in a chamber orchestra as a young person, which I thought was my whole life. So I knew I would be in music, but the dream was, I think, a bit more singular and narrow. One thing I never dreamt of was becoming an arts administrator.
Oh, isn't that something? Is it? Well, oh, please keep going.
No, that's the piece that ended up happening more organically. I eventually, in my 20s, I began doing some teaching, and I fell in love with that aspect of it, and always kind of pictured myself in the realm of music, creating, collaborating, teaching, giving back, and learning. In some ways, that's still occurring, but the aspect of making music happen for and with others from the administrative standpoint never entered my dream stage. But I think I want to say that the reality now is better than the dream ever was.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a great segue to our third question. Describe your work and your dreams and aspirations now as an adult.
Yeah, that's a great one. So I'm fortunate to now lead the Sphinx organization, which is a national nonprofit whose work centers around social justice and performing arts, and really transforming lives through the power of diversity in the arts. And my work now revolves around kind of empowering all aspects of that work, from working directly with artists to building programs to fundraising and fundraising, and really developing the work of the leaders on my team who empower and advance and enhance that work every day. I love that I get to be involved in all aspects of it, understanding kind of the intricacies of what our teaching artists go through to give back and develop the next generation of young artists, to really looking at ways to sustain this work and talking to folks with a great deal of resources who can help us build a path toward staying around and being sustainable. And also just thinking strategically about what should the work look like today and how might it be different in 5 years versus 25 years. And how do we make sure what we've built here at Sphinx, sustain itself long beyond when I'm around. So sure. I love kind of all different aspects of it. And as far as dream for it, for me, professionally speaking, my ultimate dream is that Sphinx become irrelevant. In a few decades, hopefully still in our lifetime. In that, I think the idea behind Sphinx was always the social justice piece of it. Anyway, was always such that the field that we love and in which we work should be reflective of the people that it serves. And of course it isn't. So once we get to a point, and I hope and I believe that we will get to a point where the field is not only serving, but also is served by those who occupy the communities in which we reside, and where there's that reciprocal relationship between the community and music. I hope that we get to that spot, and I hope that the work of Sphinx becomes, while a wonderful historical kind of monumental importance, but not relevant. That's the ultimate dream. But as far as short-term dreams, still in my lifetime and within the realm of what I can influence, my dream is such that we can do better in terms of bridging the gap between the incredible pool of artists and musicians of color and what is the establishment, which is the field. And my dream is that Sphinx and I myself can serve in that capacity of not only bridging the gap, but really that catalyst piece, bringing it together and really illustrating how talent doesn't pick demographics. It's everywhere. And it's just about nurturing and making connections and really going after that authentic meaning of music in the arts, which is what I think all of us are after.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are wonderful answers, and I really appreciate your candor and just the courage to create such a wonderful organization that your dream for it is its irrelevancy, and that speaks to your own morality, which actually leads us to our fourth question. Feel free to answer this any way that you want, but I think it's an important question to ask that doesn't always make it into the realm of the questions that are asked of us and the questions that are asked of us as artists and as arts administrators. Question number 4: how does love function within your life?
It's a great question. It functions in all sorts of varieties of ways, and it's a pretty integral aspect of, I think, life for me, both at work and at home. First and foremost, I'm fortunate that that my familial love actually is so closely integrated to the work that I do, in that in building Sphinx early on, I was able to build it together with someone who became my life partner, and whose vision I think served very much as kind of that foundation, that catalyst for my own thinking about the connection between what I loved, which was music, and what I felt I needed to find a place for, which was society and the community in which I lived. So I think falling in love with the vision and kind of that sense of purpose for me personally also came with the opportunity to build a personal relationship with someone who I absolutely adore and who is a thought partner and a life partner and also in many ways just my best friend. So I'm lucky to have that piece. Outside of doing the work that I do. I'm also a mom. So
Yeah.
love in that sense is very much without any condition, and the biggest gift that I have is the love of and for my children. So that's kind of another aspect of it. And our family, just the way that things worked out is that our family is very integrated into everything that we are and what we do. So music and Sphinx and the work that I do is very much part of this familial cycle, and in many ways inseparable, because I am what I do in many ways. And as the famous saying goes, we are what we repeatedly do, and we. I think that just translates all these man-made boundaries of kind of what is work and what is life don't necessarily exist for me in a traditional sense. And then beyond that, I think a genuine and authentic and a very strong love of what we're after at Banks also permeates my life, in that I think without love or so to speak, passion in the way that I think about it, it's very difficult to find a sense of meaning and purpose. And in that way, I think pretty difficult to be successful or to offer any sort of impact to those who you surround and those who you serve. I think it's a pretty important ingredient.
That is wonderful. Um, Help us understand your interpretation of arts leadership and the enterprising artist.
Yeah, those are great. So, arts leadership for me, in my mind, means a sense of realization within an artist, without regard of kind of what art form, that brings them to a point where they recognize they've been given a gift of expression and they must lead through it. I think of arts leadership as something that should be nurtured within and developed for every one of our students in places of higher education, in community music schools and conservatories, in our youth orchestras, and for that matter, within any young person who's thinking of seriously connecting with music and having that be their vehicle for expression. And then I think for too long, we've thought of arts for art's sake. I think that model was relevant for a period of time and for a particular maybe segment of our society. Today, I think the only way the arts survive is if they find a sense of relevance. And the only way they're relevant is if the artists make them so. Because I think what we would suffer from would be the sense of, and I think what we do suffer from still, is a sense of separation, disenfranchisement from community, and a sense of a lack of relevance, certainly for certain segments of the arts. And in that way, it falls upon us as artists and arts leaders to lead through this gift or vehicle that we have, which is either our instrument or advocacy for arts advocates, or if we are scholars, then really through what we study in our realm. So arts leadership means that for me, and I think in that way it's without too much differentiation of whether we are active performing artists or composers or scholars or pedagogues who really pass on that sense of skill. And then I think the second part of the question was an enterprising artist, wasn't it?
Yes, help us understand your interpretation of the enterprising artist.
Yeah. In my sense of an enterprising artist, it's pretty, in an elemental sense, I think of it as a capable artist. I know that the sense of enterprise and entrepreneurship have been concepts that now have made themselves into the world of academia and even from the theoretical standpoint. And when we think traditionally of an enterprising artist or an arts entrepreneur, I think we think of folks who start things. And I think my thinking is a little bit more simplistic in that I think any surviving and a thriving artist is an enterprising artist
Ah,
today. I think it's not, I want to say it's not rocket science in that
right.
um, I think it's an artist who's aware of their own capabilities, but also their own place in the society and their community. It's an artist who is adjusted, aware, and willing to serve through their art. Um, I think the number one qualifier for me when I think of an enterprising artist is courage, um, meaning that it's a combination of a skill set and just a willingness to step forth and fit in or establish their own place or establish their own trend. But I think an enterprising artist is a courageous, capable, and a thriving artist today.
Well, that is wonderful. Well, we're halfway through, and these
Yay!
are yeah, these are amazing questions, and they I think it's really helping me to understand your perspective on what is such a broad and vital aspect of our everyday lives, past, present, and future. With
Yeah.
that, which artist, only one, which artist do you most admire and why?
Oh, that's not fair.
I know. I know. Maybe I should say, which artist do you most admire and why today?
Oh, okay. So, see, I was going
Sure.
to ask. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, this is very difficult, but possible. I would probably land with Yo-Yo Ma,
Oh, wow.
and I think that way, not simply because he is just such an incredible and out of this world communicator and a musician, but beyond the cello playing, I think for me, my admiration aspect comes from his absolutely selfless and boundless commitment to being generous, combined with and topped with ungodly humility.
Mm.
I think he's probably one of the most humble human beings I've ever encountered. And that's a gift. That's pretty inspiring. I think the way in which he thinks of his gift of communication and music and this generosity with which he imparts it upon others, from the sense of collaboration, but also just kind of this absolutely unconditional love for what he does and authenticity. I think those are the qualities that absolutely they're inspiring, and those are some of the things that I hope to be able to help develop within the artists whose lives I'm fortunate enough to touch as well. So that would be it for me.
Well, the sister question, or the brother question, to that question is, which arts presenter, administrator, or cultural leader do you most admire and why?
Hmm. And here, I reckon you want me to pick one as well.
Just one today. Today.
Oh,
Which,
it's difficult. Huh. It's difficult because there are many and all for different reasons.
sure. But I'm just curious as to the one
Yeah.
that is maybe at the forefront of your mind today, or
Mhm.
maybe someone you're working with or have worked with that has made a big impression on you. Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah?
Well, I'm limited to one, and we get one go around at this. So I'll have to
Yes.
say, for reasons of versatility
Mm.
and just the uniqueness and the strength of one's vision, I have yet to encounter someone that's all encompassing and flexible and versatile as the founder of the Sphinx organization.
Oh, wow. Sure.
As far as you know,
Aaron Dworkin.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, I think the qualities that stand out there for me that are still so rarely found and continue to remain, something we want to see more of. Um, I think that the courage to say what matters, even when it might be difficult, in fact, even when it might be dangerous, I think that's something that we could really use in our field a lot of and develop within young people. The piece that is often missed there, I think, is that it's the courage to say and do what's important and what matters, whether someone is looking or not. But it's also fueled by and coupled with deep knowledge and authenticity. And what's really important is that inherent flexibility, that in the event that what you do really backfires, one still needs to move forward and find a different way. So that's a kind of dogged commitment to persistence and singularity of mission. I think that those are the qualities that I think, however biased I might be in that, I would say that kind of a combination is something that I absolutely have come to appreciate, admire, want to emulate, and more importantly, want to illuminate for others who are trying to build their own enterprises.
I was just thinking, I think this is kind of a paraphrase of what you just said, and it's so powerful. The courage and ability to do and say the difficult and dangerous things.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. That's really important. We're almost there. Question number 7. Does the artistic community have a role and responsibility towards the problems afflicting our communities?
Oh, that's a great question. Absolutely, we do. Of course, these are my opinions, but absolutely, I think the artistic community, we as artists or the artistic community, every artist, every arts advocate, the establishment, at any level, we have a sense of duty from so many different perspectives. One, if we think historically, the artists have been really the bards or the historians of their communities. In many ways, what happens in our lives, in our societies, is recorded, performed, narrated, remembered, expressed through the arts. And I think in many ways, the arts can be that glue that could connect people with differing opinions and differing needs. Because the arts are universal, the language is the same. But I think for too long, the positioning and the access hasn't been the same. The arts have not done a great job of being an equitable platform. The arts haven't done a great job of telling everyone's story and really being able to represent and truly be the historians of our entire society. And I think some of the basic ways in which the artists hold that responsibility to their community is that they have a gift and they have an instrument, both literally and philosophically speaking, and that gift needs to be used. It comes through education and where it's offered and to whom it's offered, and who and whose lives we touch through music education. I think that's very important. The other piece is, of course, opportunities for artists of all walks of life, where, as we know all too often talked about, is the fact that merit is not really the primary kind of prerequisite for artists finding a place in this industry. So I think there are so many powerful opportunities we can provide to others. There are so many ways in which we can illuminate issues that exist in our society through the arts. And I think we all hold that responsibility. And I think we can think of it as a duty or a responsibility. We could also think about it as a privilege.
Absolutely.
And I kind of prefer that.
Hmm. Two more questions. What terrifies you the most?
Mhm. Hmm. Well, probably it's not a way to tease out of the question, but I think what terrifies me the most is um, things I have absolutely no control of.
Hmm.
um, Completely off the wall. Weapons of mass destruction.
Sure. Well,
Things that may um, wipe life as we know it off the face of the earth. And war and other acts of humanity that inflict the greatest possible pain that could be brought to people. That's probably what terrifies me the very most. Loss of life for those, who are most dear to me. Those are the kinds of things that most terrify me.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Last question.
Last question.
Next year, you will dot dot dot.
Ha! Who's thinking that far ahead?
That's a good question. But if you had to, in 365 days next year, you will dot dot dot.
Yeah, that's a great one. Next year, I will find a way to
Hmm.
bring the most unlikely, unrelated, um, most opposite sides of our field together to make something fundamental happen.
Oh, that is that is so perfect. That is so perfect. Well, I hope to interview you again this time
Well,
next
thank
year.
you. This
And
was great fun. Sounds like a great project.
well, thank you so much. I mean, these questions and much more importantly, your answers to them and responses to them, they're really important because I'm finding in the people that I work with and the people that I'm sharing with. I don't have students; I have contributors. We all contribute to a world of ideas, a moment in time of our classrooms. Um, in conversations I've had with the contributors that I'm working with, um, these are some of the questions that have come up.
Mhm.
These are some of the uh, gaps in knowledge and experience that my contributors and audience members simply don't have. And this is also part of my own curiosity. I'm really interested, and I was really taken by, for example, the response you made towards the role of the artistic community towards the problems affecting our communities. As a matter of fact, Joel Thompson,
Mm,
composer of Seven Last Words of the Unarmed, is going to be
yeah.
joining us at Arizona State University as a Projecting All Voices fellow. Yeah,
Oh,
which is really
that's so
fantastic.
great. I love
And
that man. That
yeah,
he's a visionary, really.
yeah, and it really speaks to the work that you've done, you and Aaron have done in terms of um, just well making our communities and making the artistic community much more responsible to our family and social community. And I think for a lot of young artists, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a trend where there is a real social and moral responsibility in the work that they're doing.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think that it's being awakened and developed, and it's great to see. I don't think it was there when we were students.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
Not to that extent. You had to sort of break out of the mold to find it yourself, and now at least it's being recognized.
Yes, yes. So,
So
Alpha,
it's great.
listen, thank you for everything you've done and are doing to make our world a little bit better. And thank you for your brilliant leadership, your expansive, voluminous mind, and for your compassion and the care and treatment you've have exhibited to thousands, tens of thousands, and indeed, I think millions of people worldwide in the work that you're doing. It's greatly appreciated by us all.
Thank you so much. I thank you for what you do, and this was great fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.